On October 31, 1977, 69-year-old Zoltan Robatsek and his 33-year-old grandson, Imre, were brutally attacked inside their California home by a club-wielding man clad in a full skeleton costume. Tragically, Zoltan did not survive. The case remains unsolved. Around 7:30 p.m. on Halloween night, 1977, 33-year-old Imre Robatsek, a resident of Studio City, Los Angeles, California, heard the doorbell chime. Imre, confined to a wheelchair due to cerebral palsy, lived with his 69-year-old grandfather Zoltan Robatsek, a textile import-exporter, however was home alone at the time. Anticipating trick-or-treaters, Imre answered the door with a bowl of candy in hand. Instead, a man in a full-body skeleton costume, wielding a club, confronted him. In a swift and horrifying act, the stranger seized Imre and forced his way into the residence, slamming the door shut behind them. Inside, the costume-clad intruder launched a brutal assault on Imre, repeatedly striking him with the club. The intruder demanded information about Zoltan's return. When Imre struggled to provide a clear answer, the masked man violently knocked Imre from his wheelchair, and bound and gagged him. Then, he waited. When Zoltan returned home later that evening, the man ambushed him, mercilessly beating him while Imre helplessly watched from the floor. The struggle ultimately ended in Zoltan's bedroom. There, after overpowering him, the assailant bound him and placed him on the bed. However, the brutality did not cease. The perpetrator continued to inflict blows with the club until Zoltan was no longer conscious. The masked man then proceeded to ransack the Robatsek home. He made off with jewelry, $1,000 in cash, and Zoltan's handicapped accessible van. The perpetrator then vanished from the scene. Bound and alone, Imre struggled with his bindings for 2 hours before managing to break free. He then sought help from a neighbor. Sadly, Zoltan was declared deceased at the scene. Unfortunately, Imre's description of the assailant provided police with limited details. He reported the suspect to be of slender build, standing between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet tall, and clad in a skeleton costume and mask. The stolen vehicle was learned to be a white, though considerably dirty rusted, 1971 Dodge with a commercial California license plate, number 423 liters. The van was never located. Tragically, Zoltan was the last living relative Imre had. Imre was born in Hungary in 1944. In interviews after Zoltan's murder, Imre confirmed both of his parents were deceased, however I unfortunately could find no additional information about them. He and his grandparents are listed in the Arolsen Archives, an online archive listing the victims and survivors of Nazi persecution, as survivors of Dachau, a German concentration camp, in 1944. In 1950 Zoltan and his wife, Maria Imre's grandmother legally adopted him. The trio immigrated to the U.S. and settled down in California. Sadly, Maria passed away in 1975, leaving only Zoltan to care for Imre. After Zoltan's murder, Imre was deemed incapable of living on his own, and was sent to the Spastic Children's Foundation. 2 weeks after his grandfather's death, Imre told reporters he wished to return home, adding he wanted to be reunited with his grandpa's beloved Great Danes that had been sent to the pound. According to staff, Imre remained stoic but often wrote poetry and painted. Imre passed away in the winter of 1989. The murder of Zoltan Robatsek remains unsolved. Sources: newspaper clippings or Olsen Archives.